Hello everyone, welcome to this video explaining the ICSE 2021 reviewing process. My name is Arie van Deursen, and I'm from Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. And we have...
I'm Tao Xie from Peking University, China.
And let's see the next slide. So when thinking about the ICSE reviewing process, we need to take into account a couple of objectives which are listed here, and they sort of guide the whole reviewing process. So that's why it's good to be aware of them. The first thing is, of course, that we want to accept high quality papers in any topic in software engineering. So that's the good thing that we aim at. At the same time, there are papers that cannot come in, and there we want to give the clearest feedback possible. So those are the two things that we aim to do. At the same time, what we want to do is, there are many different papers and we want to judge them against the same bar. We want a process that is transparent and that also feels safe to both the authors and the reviewers. And for that reason, we want to have a process in which in each decision there are at least 5 people involved, 3 reviewers, a moderator and a chair. And we need a process that scales up to 600 papers or more. And at the same time, we want to have a process in which everyone involved has a manageable load. Well, in the next slides, we'll discuss how we think we achieve those objectives.
Okay, so here on the slides, we list some major differences of ICSE 2021 PC roles in contrast to ICSE 2020. Basically, every PC member including this new role, Arie chair, has this reviewer role and the moderation role. But for Arie chair, we have this Arie chair role instead of the moderation role. Notice that we don't have a separate program board, unlike past several years ICSE PC. Everyone would take both roles as we discussed. In addition, we had this new role of Arie chair, which we will discuss a little bit more in the next several slides. For this new Arie chair role, we don't have the moderation role. Instead, we have the Arie chair role with more details on the slides, on this slide and the next couple of slides. Let's walk through some details of each of these reviewer role, moderator role, and Arie chair role. Typically, reviewer, as you could imagine, would write high quality review, participate in discussion for leading to consensus, hopefully, for the final decision for the paper. Moderator role would moderate discussion among the 3 reviewers. Sometimes we may have more than 3 reviewers in rare cases when needed. We will discuss a little bit later on, but typically it would be 3 reviewers per paper. And the moderator would also moderate the discussion so that we could build consensus whenever possible, and then propose a decision based on the discussion. And finally, after decision is made, write meta review for explaining some details on how the decision is made with whatever the decision we have for the paper. For this new role of Arie chair, we want to have consistency for papers, especially within a single area. Of course, in a high level, we want to see the criterion consistency across areas. Some examples would be in terms of evaluation criterion, or some other other aspects of the criterion for judging or assessing the papers. We want to see the criterion consistency. The Arie chair would have this kind of meta level, monitoring or moderating on moderators and reviewers, right, during the discussion and the decision-making processing. In addition, the Arie chair would also confirm or challenge the proposed decisions by the moderators, right, based on the discussion, and ensure all steps of the reviewing process are taken in a timely manner, right? Basically, if you could view Arie chair, it's kind of like a proxy chair in the final decisions or even the whole reviewing process to help out our two program co-chairs. As you can imagine, with the scale of the ICSE reviewing, we have these kind of like Arie chair to help out in order to scale well while assuring the quality of the reviewing. So the Arie chairs for our ICSE 2021 include 7 Arie chairs listed on the right-hand side on the slide, corresponding to 7 major topic areas that we identified for ICSE 2021 based on a little bit kind of like a data analysis on the past several years, like the popular areas, topics. I'm not going to read, all the details. You could just read on the slides for the area names and the Arie chairs names, also listed on our conference website. So in a little bit more details, for these 7 key areas, topic areas, we also classify subtopics under each of these key areas. When the authors submit their papers, they mark which subtopic their papers will fall into, right? And we use such information to aggregate, the subtopics into the major key area the paper falls into. It's likely a single paper may fall into multiple key areas. Then we just make the decision on finding the most aligned key area for this particular paper, so that we could assign Arie chair for each paper. A little bit more detail about the assignment of the Arie chair to a paper. As we already discussed, areas can have an avoidable overlap, right? As you could imagine on the list of the detailed subtopics under each of the key area. PC members indicate their expertise on these 40 subtopics as well. The same thing, as I mentioned already, the authors also mark their papers on a subset of these 40 subtopics for their paper. And then we calculate fit of a paper with each area. Then papers in principle assigned to the best fitting Arie chair. Indeed, if the size of these 7 key areas would be too unbalanced, we will move papers to other fitting areas so that we have the low balance among the Arie chairs. Next area, we'll discuss the next several slides. Arie, please.
Yes, so about the PC itself, we are 158 people. Very great that you are all accepted. And in those 158, there are 7 area chairs. We have roughly 60% men, 40% women. The distribution geographically is North America, EU, Asia, and other is 40, 30, 20, 10%. And this sort of corresponds to the paper submissions typically also, so that is okay-ish. And in terms of academia, industry, we have roughly 10% coming from industry, so that's also, we're very happy with that. Another innovation we did this time is that we asked you, what do you prefer? Reviewing, moderating, or, well, no preference. And about a quarter of you indicated, yes, we prefer moderation. Almost half said we prefer reviewing, and the rest said, well, it's up to you. So we try to include this also in the distribution of the work that needs to be done. Next slide, please. So here we see the expected reviewer and moderation load that we expect for the PC members. So everyone will be involved in reviewing. The people doing we indicated the preference for the reviewing role. They'll have 12 to 13 papers to review, as well as 2 or 3 moderations to be done. Whereas moderators, they have 8 to 9 papers to review and 9 to 10 papers to moderate. And the no preference group has the same as the reviewer. And in this way, everyone is also involved in both the reviewing and the moderation. And especially maybe more junior people who have never done or have done this moderation a little less often, they then also get exposed to this. And these numbers are based on the assumption that we have 600 submissions, which is what we had last year and what we are expecting this year as well. Okay, indeed, the next, please. So one of the first things that everyone will have to do is indicate conflicts of interest. That is something that you can do already right now. So the conflict of interest you can indicate immediately. So please do so. This is done in HotCrp, and it's a bit different from EasyChair, which was used in 2018 and earlier years. So if you've never used HotCrp, make sure you do it as soon as possible. And essentially, you need to list all the people you have worked with, which you have a conflict with, and think of them, and anyone who might submit to ICSE, put them in the list. So please do so, and please do so the latest on August 15. Next slide, please. Another early thing to do is paper bidding. Well, you've all placed paper bids in the past, of course. A first thing to do, which you can already do now, is make sure that the paper topics in HotCrp are up to date. Whenever, at the moment you accepted being a PC member, you indicated your topics, make sure that those are up to date. Then you can use those to sort or order all the papers. So you'll have 600 papers to look at. Maybe that's a bit much, so look at the papers with the most interesting topics first. Then place positive bids on papers that you have the expertise to review. And I think one important guideline is that if you think that you are one of the few on the PC with expertise on the paper, make sure to place that high bid, because we then need you to review that paper. So even if you think, well, I'm not so interested in this paper, if you have the expertise, please place a bid so that you can use your expertise to get a fair review for this paper. And in terms of total number of bids, target 45 positive bids, and in that way we'll have some freedom to give everyone the papers they like most. Next, please. Then we'll go through the reviewing and discussion phases, and this summarizes the reviewing phases. And the first reviewing phases will focus on review writing. Well, we talked about bidding, that's 3 days, so make sure you're in time there. Then review round 2 will be 4 weeks, and there we aim at getting you half of your papers to be reviewed. So in the first 4 weeks, focus on start early, start in week 1, start submitting papers, reviews, and do that in round 1 for the first half. And then we have round 2 of 3 weeks for the second half of your papers. Then after those 7 weeks, we have a little quality gate where everyone can read each other's reviews, can give feedback, and can make sure that the reviewers are of the high quality that ICSE authors expect from the reviews. And here the moderators will play an important role, and they will identify papers needing additional review, or maybe a replacement review, or maybe someone wasn't able to do the actual reviewing despite the promises. So there may be some problems. Those are all addressed here. Also, in case there is really missing expertise, this is the moment to jump in and to request an extra review. Then we have a review round number 3, where every PC member may get 1 emergency paper and has 1 week to review that paper. Then we have a final little discussion before the rebuttal that Tao will explain on the next slide, and then we have a rebuttal phase in which authors can use 3 days to respond to questions raised by the reviewers. Tao, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me dive into details about the pre-rebuttals along with post-rebuttal and until like the final decision making. So let's talk about pre-rebuttal. Basically, as Arie mentioned, we have 4 days. We can start this pre-rebuttal discussion as soon as 3 reviews are in. Keep in mind, this discussion for pre-rebuttal is not intended to build consensus for decision making. The goal of the discussion here for pre-rebuttal is to identify what additional information for an author could support decision making so that we could include questions for soliciting such information from the authors, like making sure we get enough information for us later decision making. So in the result of this discussion for pre-rebuttal is the list of questions for authors to address during the rebuttal. Keep in mind, I mean, the discussion is not leading to decisions in this phase of the discussion. Then we had the rebuttal period. So after we gather the rebuttal, we will move on to this post-rebuttal discussion. We have discussion 2 after rebuttal as more like decision making for those clear cases. Basically, in this discussion phase, we would like to identify those papers which only rejects or only accepts, and without further discussion for leading to kind of like a mixture of the rejects and accepts. We estimate these papers would fall into about 50% of the papers that we are reviewing. So in the end, the discussion 2 for clear cases would lead to decision making for these papers, including the meta review being written by the moderator for these papers. So that's like the 5 days of this discussion 2 for clear cases. After the rebuttal is in, we actually also immediately start discussion 3, which means that actually later discussion 4, discussion 4 and 3 would overlap with discussion 2, okay, with the visual display of the timing on the right-hand side to more clearly indicate this nature of overlapping. Basically, discussion 3 would include 10 days, including the first 5 days. It's about discussing those mixed cases so that we could discuss for leading to consensus, if possible, being built among the reviewers based on the reviews and the rebuttal. Okay, so the outcome of the discussion 3 for mixed cases will include 2 kinds of outcomes. The first one is on the decision making for those papers that we can build consensus along with the meta review written by the moderator. So we are estimating about another 25% of the papers fall into this category where we could make decision. Then we have the other outcome of the discussion where is the identification of the papers without consensus being built during this discussion 3 for mixed cases. So that's discussion 3. And then for discussion 4, actually lasting 15 days. Here, when we list the days, they are the actual calendar days, not like just a week. Basically, a week has 7 days, okay? Not 5-day working days. So want to mention that for all the days units that we discussed on the slides. So the discussion 4, we have these non-consensus for these papers, right? And for more like the leftover cases from discussion 2 and discussion 3 phases. And for discussion 4, lasting 15 days, basically being started after the rebuttal is in. We already have discussion on these difficult cases. So basically in discussions 4 for these non-consensus, we have the moderator being in charge, in having the area chair also jumping into the discussion loop, right, when needed. Of course, for some cases, the area chair may also jump into, the discussion loop. For example, when the moderator may not provide in time moderation, right, that the area chair would monitor that kind of in the meta level to make sure timely discussion and moderation would be in place. So the outcome of this discussion 4 would be like allowing us to reach decision for the final 25% of the residual, the leftover cases with without decision being made in earlier discussion phases. So these are the distributions of these 3 discussion phases across 15 days. And then we had this chair meeting for 2 days, for us to cover all the remaining abnormal cases, so that the area chairs, together with Arie and myself, the program co-chairs, to finalize all the decisions. Then the PC members for reviewing those papers would be in a standby mode for fast responses on papers that would be still discussed in the phase 4, so that we can have the wrap up of the decision making and high quality meta review for each paper in our reviewing pool. Okay, so Arie will continue the discussion of more details. Arie, please.
Yeah, so here we see the full timeline with the actual dates then, and the number of days for each of the phases. So the yellow dates are visible to the authors. So we have the submission date on August 28th. We have the rebuttal period that ends on November 20. So it ends on a Friday. So 3 working days is for the authors to do a rebuttal. And then our aim is to inform the authors the latest on Thursday, December 17 of the whole process, of the outcome. And we see the activities with the various reviewing rounds and discussion rounds, etc., as just discussed. We are with over 150 people. It is important to try to stick to these deadlines as much as possible. So please help us with that by doing your job professionally. Thank you. Next slide, please. And I think it's yours, Tao.
Yes, thank you. So here are the typical brief review guidelines. Of course, in the later emails, we will include more details. So basically, you as a PC member or the reviewer role, you write a summary in your own words and collect feedback, give thoughts on 5 ICSE criterion: soundness, significance, novelty, verifiability, presentation. And then identify the decisive factors resulting in acceptance, identify clarification questions that could help in the later decision making, be polite, constructive, informative. In general, we would like to have the positive attitude for the acceptance. Basically, we seek for reasons for acceptance. Accept unless you see a blocker. Okay, basically on the top right corner, we give you the very high level expectations in terms of the logistics. Basically commit to the deadlines as listed by Arie in the last slide. Start as early as possible. Don't do things in the last minute, right? And submit your review as soon as it's done. Don't wait until last minute to just upload in a big batch, right? So that you basically incrementally upload your review after the review is done. Arie, you can take over.
Maybe something about the discussions. Discussions play an important role. Be polite, be friendly to each other. I think another important aspect is that it is exchange of information, and then it's important to be willing to move. So there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I read the other reviews and now I realize that it is like this and I can accept the paper. That is perfectly fine. So please don't stick to the old review that you originally wrote, but move around and listen to the others and change positions. That is a good strength. As in the reviewing, seek for reasons for acceptance. The discussion phase may actually be very informative, so that may yield new information, then update the reviews where necessary. With papers, there's often a lot that can be discussed. I think it helps if you focus the discussion on those factors that are really decisive. So focus on the things that are the make or break for the paper, the things that really affect the decision making. And then in the end, the final meta review, it helps to explain to the authors, well, in the discussion, these and these things played a role, and these are the factors that gave the eventual decision. In terms of logistics, be responsive. That is important in discussion. So as soon as a reaction comes in, try to respond as soon as possible. Stick to the deadlines and start the discussion phase again as early as possible. Next.
For ICSE 2021, we allow conditional accepts, but for such cases, we require a very clear and easily checkable explicit acceptance condition. Here, easily checkable would be like even the chairs, Arie and I myself can actually check it, right? Rather than relying on some more like a very inside the person's expert opinion to check it, right? And so that's how we define easily checkable. And in addition, one PC member among the 3 reviewers should be willing to check the condition. We need to have someone to be in charge for being willing to later, after the author submit their revised version, to check the condition. Typically, the conditions would be about the presentation, most likely. If the conditions lie out of the scope of a presentation, then Arie and myself would need to jump in to check to see what are the conditions, right? So in order to give the approval in terms of a conditional accepts. Basically, the overall tone is that we don't easily give out conditional accepts, right? But we could do that when it's needed. Okay. Arie?
Okay. Then another thing that came up is that SIGSOFT, ACM SIGSOFT has adopted open science policies. And open science has, of course, been of increasing interest in the last few years, also at ICSE. And it is about making your results openly available, checkable, etc. ICSE tries to follow those new SIGSOFT open science policies, and there's a link to those policies on the ICSE homepage. In terms of concrete things for the PC to do, well, authors can upload supplementary material in HotCrp. They need to do that anonymized. Then reviewers can look at the material in order to assess the verifiability constraint criterion. At the same time, that can be a lot of work. So reviewers don't have to do this. The reviewers must assess the paper, and and they can be informed by the supplementary material for that. Once accepted, authors can submit their additional material to the artifact evaluation track, and there will be a detailed assessment of those artifacts and their authors can earn badges stating how reusable, available, replicated or reproduced those artifacts are in fact. Okay, next please.
So let me talk about double blind. We inherit the double blind policies from past several years at ICSE. So basically, the author should do their best effort to blind their submissions so that they don't disclose the identities of the authors. At the same time, the reviewers should do their best effort not to search or discover, like Googling the title of the submission, right, to find out who are the authors. Basically, we don't. I mean, basically, the reviewers should not do that. So, but if we look at the submission contents, right? Look at the papers, even, I mean, sometimes the format, right? To see whether there are some clear violations of double blind, so that we will identify the identities of the authors. If there are such cases, we will just reject the submissions. The chairs, Arie and myself, will check the violations of double blind of submissions during the first week after the paper are submitted. I mean, after the submission deadline. If, like, during the reviewing process, reviewers identified some clear violations of the double blind, then later desk reject would be still possible. Okay. If the author, the reviewers discover the author identity by accident, right? For example, like attend a talk, right, given by someone, and then the talk contents actually would be highly similar or the same as the contents in the submissions, to cause the high confidence guess of the author identity. For such situations, the reviewers can still continue reviewing. Okay. Note that the authors can publish their preprints on archive, but we put constraints on the timeline, like before or after certain period of the time, before or after the submission deadline. Please check the call for submissions to find the detail, including the FAQs. We include the detail in the FAQ and for the details of the double blind. Okay, so that's pretty much. We would like to debrief you, our dear PC members, on our ICSE 2021 reviewing process. We will take your questions along the way, but we will organize some kind of like office hours to allow us to discuss with you on some of those feedback that you would like to give in terms of improving our reviewing process, along with some clarification questions that you may have. And we will give out more details in our emails sent to you in terms of the exact time slots that would be good for you to jump into the office hours to discuss with us. But of course, you should feel free to interact with us through emails or other kind of on-demand appointments. If you couldn't make any of our arranged or to be arranged office hours, we would like to work with you to make ICSE 2021 a great success. Arie, do you have any more words to say before we conclude this video?
Maybe one word. Thank you all PC members for serving on the PC. And we look very much forward to working with all of you. And also, make sure you also submit a paper to ICSE 2021. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye.